In this lesson, I'm going to talk about a different kind of mat. It's called a stencil. Now, when you think about a track mat, the track mat affects the layer directly below it, but a stencil affects every layer below it. So to see how that works, let's go to Working Files, go to After Effects Projects, and open up 1103 Stencils. We have two comps in this project. We're going to work primarily in this comp here. What we've got here is a text layer and three other layers that are all blended together in some way. Let me show you how that works. Close the first three off there. Just look at this bottom one first. This is the little track mat graphic we've seen before, a little animated graphic there. Turn that one off and look at the next one. This is the gradient that I made inside Photoshop when we're animating here from right to left. There we go. And this third one here is a background preset that I got from the presets over here. You can see how that works as well. This too is animated. There you go, like that. But they all blend together, and how does that work? Well, here's the bottom one. No need to blend that one. It's the base. The one above it, this yellow and black one, I'm blending with the one below it using what's called linear light, a linear light blending mode. I could have picked a different blending mode, but I kind of like the way that looked there. And finally, this animated background, this solid layer here, using the difference blending mode. And again, I could have picked a different one, but it worked pretty well here. And all three of these guys work together. You can see how they animate together there. Well, what I want to have happen now is I want to have all these three layers working together inside a stencil. If this were a track mat, I couldn't do this. Let me show you what I mean. This text is on the top here. Let me turn it on so you can see it. Now, if I were to turn this into a track mat, it would apply only to the next layer below it. When you make a track mat, it works only with the layer directly beneath it. So I'm going to select this layer here and go to get track mat, click on this, make the alpha mat because we got text here. And you can see that background layer is showing up inside that track mat, which is what you'd expect to see. What we have below it are these two guys that you can still see, but I want them to be inside of the text, not as a background. So I'm going to undo that there by just going back to no track mat and turning the eyeball back on for the text. What I want to do now is make a stencil. And it's easy to make a stencil, but it maybe is hard to find. You'd think that a stencil, which is a mat, would be inside the track mat list, but it's not. It's over here in the modes drop-down menu. This is the modes drop-down menu, and at the bottom, way down at the bottom, there's a group called the mat group here. These four guys are mats: Stencil Alpha, Stencil Luma, Silhouette Alpha, and Silhouette Luma. We're going to look at the alpha guys first here because we're working with text, and text is an alpha channel. So we'll do Stencil Alpha. When I click this, watch what happens. These three layers will appear inside the text like a stencil. There you go. Pretty nifty. And if I do Silhouette, then the three guys will be empty there, but everything else will be filled in like that, just as you'd expect. Let me go back to the alpha version for a stencil. So what's going on there is that you can see those three layers are all still working together and are all inside that stencil. You can also do this with a clip that doesn't have transparency, but you can find Luma in it. So I'm going to use that fire that I've used before where the flame's coming from the left-hand side. We'll put that one down here now, like so. And it's going to cover up everything for the time being. There's the fire. And I'm going to use this as a stencil. So I'm going to turn off this top one here. We don't have that guy interfering with things. I'm going to make this one a stencil. So I'm going to go down here and go Stencil Luma. There you go. And then wherever it's bright, that makes those layers down below opaque. Means that you can see them all blended together. Wherever it's black or dark, then it's transparent on this layer, and you don't see those guys down here. And if I make it a silhouette, obviously the opposite will happen. You get this kind of, I don't know, jellyfish-like thing. You see everybody else below it. And if you want to make this a little more distinct, you can always put the curves effect on there. So I'll go curves. Let me go get that here and apply that to that mat, that fire. Increase the contrast a bit by lifting that there, dropping that here, and adjusting the brightness like that. That makes it more distinct. It might be more distinct if I go just to the stencil side of things. There you go, like that. So that's how stencil works. You can use it with something that has transparency, an alpha channel, or something that has some variability in luminance. But you can also blend them together. You're not stuck with just having one stencil per comp. You can have them work together. Let me show you how that works. I'll turn off this top track now. Go back down this one here. We've got this stencil going, Stencil Alpha. Now if I add that fire above that and have that be a stencil, you'll see how that works together. I'm going to switch this thing back to normal so we can see it how it comes on later. So I'll go normal first. Turn that on so it covers everything up. And now I'm going to use that as a stencil. I'll go a little farther in so you can't miss the fire. Over here and click this and go down to stencil again by hitting on down here. We'll go Stencil Luma. And now they work together. So you've got this one below working for the text and the one above revealing the text with the fire. So you can have a couple of guys working together here. Pretty neat. Now this is all well and good, but You typically won't have a project that looks like this, where you've got all this transparency and some text showing through. You want to put this on something. You want to put it on a background. So let's say I put a background underneath all this stuff. What's going to happen? Well, think about it for a second. If the stencil cuts through everything, it's going to cut through the background, and you won't have a background. Let's just try that out. I've got this background over here, a solid layer that's got some animation there. I'm going to copy this, Control-Command-C. I'm going to go back to the stencil. I'm going to put it down below it. Well, first it's going to go above, then I'll drag it to down below there. Control-Command-V, there it is. I'm going to drag it to the bottom, and what's going to happen? Nothing. It's going to cut right through, and you won't see it at all because this is not blending in any way with the layers above it. So it just is cut out of the deal. You can't have a background when you've got a stencil because the stencil cuts through everything. So what do you do about this? Well, what you do is you use something called a nested comp or a pre-composition. And I'm going to discuss nested comps in detail in an upcoming chapter. And I'm also going to talk about them again in the next lesson when we talk about applying effects and layer styles to track mats and to stencils. But let me just give you a brief demonstration because I don't want to leave you hanging here wondering how it is I can use this darn thing. So I'm going to delete this layer first of all, just to make sure it doesn't confuse things. And then I'm going to nest this inside another comp. So I'm going to turn this thing back off so I can just see the text as a little more prominent view there. Let's go over to that background comp. There we go. And now I want to nest that other comp inside here. Let's look at the project panel and see what I mean. The stencil comp looks for all the world just like an asset, like it could be a video or a graphic or still image, something like that. And it will behave like an asset. You can drag it down to another comp and it'll be one layer. Even though this comp may be comprised of dozens of layers, it will behave as if it's one layer here. So I'm going to drag this one down and nest it inside this background comp on top, and there it is. And now you can see it over a background. It's not cutting through anything. It's just a layer there. If I go back to this stencil, let's say I turn on that other stencil, that fire there. I'll pull this in so you can see it again. There you go. If I bring that in, I've made a change to this now. I'll go back to this one, and that change shows up here. It's a dynamic process. This nesting comp for this pre-comp thing is very much part of the After Effects workflow, and I will explain it in more detail later, but I do want to show you that you can put a stencil over a background. So as I think you can see, stencils are a lot like track mats. Now track mats affect only the single layer directly beneath the track mat, whereas with the stencil, it affects every layer beneath it.